Episode number 4 coming up here. I write this down because it makes me feel like official. Episode number 4, that's how you do that.
It's really just pictures of squirrels drinking coffee, so it is.
I'm getting pretty good at squirrels drinking coffee though, let me tell you. Hey everyone, Corey from Aquarium Co-op. I've got Lamont here in the studio with me.
Hey.
And then today is episode number 4, Real Fish Talk.
You know, a lot of families want to set up, 5 and 10 gallon tanks, and they want to, try and shoehorn as much stuff as possible in there, which, understandably everyone wants to get the most amount of bang for their buck, but, it's, rattling off the grocery list of all the components that go into putting that tank together and how much it's going to cost, and sometimes you just kind of watch that look of fun just kind of drain out of their face. Like, this is going to cost how much?
Yeah, I kill a lot of people's dreams where I basically say, if you're going to set up a fish tank, it's $250, and they just can't believe it. They're going, well, I can buy a tank and all this from a chain store, and it's like, well, you're going to get all garbage and nothing's going to live, and that 2.5 gallon tank isn't going to support that rainbow shark that your kid is wanting, that type of thing. And just like we'll do a Real Fish Talk here, we do the same thing in the store and go, the reality is $250 to start keeping things alive. And I don't care if that's a betta or something like that. There's, I guess maybe the wrong term is saying keeping something alive. I can keep something alive, but keep something thriving. By the time you've got some plants, maybe a little bit of light, a heater, you've bought food, you bought a healthy betta to begin with that wasn't $3 and, saving its life from Walmart. And the good news is, I tell people it's $250, and then they're happy when they go, well, it was only $150, and I go, great, That way you have the money set aside to make the decisions. Did you want the $50 heater, or do you want the $25 heater? You're not forced to only get the $25 heater because you've run out of money. You can make that decision. Do I want to invest in this better filter or not? And yeah, so we'd rather people get in correctly, then get as many people as we can in as cheaply as possible, and then let them self-weed out, because that's where, the statistic, if you've ever looked it up, there's 80% dropout rate of the hobby. People get in, they kill a bunch of fish, they go buy a bunch more fish, they kill them again, and then you get a fish tank in the garage that's not set up, and everyone, start asking your family members. There's a fish tank in almost every house in a garage somewhere sitting around, if it hasn't been put in the garage sale pile already. But there's a lot of 10 gallon tanks and under, and betta, like, who doesn't own a betta 2.5 gallon bow front these days? I swear they they're a dime a dozen, but they're not designed to work. I mean, physically, yes, they hold water, but you gotta have the end user in mind. Oh, it's my first aquarium, 2.5 gallons. Like, I don't set up a 2.5 gallon aquarium because I know it's gonna be ridiculously hard, and I don't want to do that much work. So,
yeah, it's trying to. It's like you're doing everything that you can to basically inform people that this. There's a point where, if you go one way, it's going to be more difficult. If you go another way, it's going to be more difficult. And I think people have a kind of the false notion that smaller is easier.
right.
And in reality, say something like a 29 would be a good starting point, where it's relatively, similar. It's going to be the similar price point for something that's half or a third the size. And, it's just, when things are reduced down to such a small level, and to keep the kind of everything in perspective, and everything is kind of within relation to each other size-wise, it gets harder and harder for people to wrap their brains around.
Yeah, and they don't realize that
This is extremely difficult. So.
Smaller isn't necessarily that much cheaper. A heater for, let's say, a 5 gallon might be $22 on our lower end line, and then one that will heat a 29 gallon tank is $24. So it's a $2 difference, and yet, the care level that's going to be required for that 5 gallon versus a 29, it's leagues easier on the 29. And the same goes for filtration. You know, it might be $20 for our low end 5 gallon filter, but then let's say you use a sponge filter for a 29, it's also $20. And so people don't get that, you know, especially during $1 a gallon sale or something, we'll send people to a Petco to buy that because that's just saving people money, and we do that. But, you know, the equipment that goes around the tank, you know, and that's the filter and the gravel and the, you know, the heater and all that kind of stuff. It's almost the same price whether it's a 5 gallon tank or a 29, but I'll tell you what, you feel a lot better when you're looking at a 29 gallon tank for your $200 than you are your 5 gallon tank. And yes, you can set up a 5 gallon tank for $30 that will just kill stuff, and that it serves its purpose of killing stuff, but by the time you put a good heater in it and you get a proper filtration system, and let's say you get an actual light that might grow some plants, and you know you might need a glass top, all of a sudden you're $150 more anyway. So, and we do a lot of what we call the retrofits, where people bought a kit tank and they're wondering why won't this plant grow? Well, why won't this happen? Why is this dying? And the answer is, it's usually, well, the light's not strong enough, and to fix that, you're going to need a glass top or to run no top, and then you're going to have to buy a light. Well, I can't just plug it in. Like, no, that's not going to work either. You literally, the capacity, it's at capacity. And then the filter, like, oh, well, this filter is designed to not be that good. You know, it's got no intake sponge, which we would recommend, which we can at least sell them that, and that'll, you know, kind of put a bandage on the problem. But the way the filter's designed might have a bad flow, or the cartridges using are designed to clog, and they're going, well, I can't afford to spend $8 on a cartridge, or 2 cartridges for it, or whatever size tank they've got going every week, and so I rinse them, and that cleans them, and, you know, we would rather show them how to put bio rings in there, or cut to fit pads, or ideally, you know, the biggest one we get, I think, a lot is they come in and they go, well, I bought a kit and this quiet flow filter is not so quiet. It's like Niagara Falls. And it's like, well, they do that on purpose. So even though, you know, they know it's loud, when you take the aquarium home and you've got your 10 gallon tank and you spent your money, you get water in it, you got fish in it, you plug that thing in, and then it's really loud, you're not going to break all that stuff down, put a fish back in a bag, put it in a box, and return it. You're going to go to the store and you're going to go, can you sell me a filter that's quieter? So it literally is part of that whole, you know, sales rep weird thing where it's like, well, let's name it, you know, something really quiet. And so they'll think like, oh yeah, it's going to be a good one. And then we'll give them the option of, experience, and then they'll come and buy another filter. It's great. And the sales reps will push that on you going, well, you know, you're going to sell the kit and they're going to come back and buy a filter, you know. And then most kits, or at least a lot of kits, don't even come with a heater, so they're going to come back and they're going to pick out a neon tetra or whatever colorful fish it is, and then we get to go, well, you'd have to have a heater. Well, I don't have a heater. Oh, what can I put in there? And you get to show them white clouds and zebra danios and maybe a goldfish if they bought a big enough tank, which a lot of times they haven't. And so it's, you know, it's an upward battle. And so the point I'm trying to make of this long rant is that you might have spent $100 on your kit, and yet we're going to replace everything but the tank from that kit anyway. And so you could have spent $30 on that tank and bought all the equipment, and yes, it might have cost you $180 to set that tank up. But if you buy a $100 kit and then you spend $150, you've now spent $250. So we can save you money in the long run by buying equipment. And unfortunately, new people in the hobby don't know enough to go read reviews on Amazon or forums or YouTube like you're watching right now and see what good equipment is. They just assume that you walk in and you buy it and it's equipment that's going to work. You know, it's, if I go over to the store and I buy an apple, I expect it's probably going to taste like an apple, and most times it does. You know, and yes, when you walk in, you buy a fish tank, you'll come home and it is a fish tank, but you don't realize that it's a bad fish tank or a bad brand. You know, but if you've eaten a lot of apples, you know what a bad apple tastes like, and you know what a good one tastes like. Most people just haven't, you know, experienced a fish tank yet, so they don't know. And, you know, that's the rub. So, yeah. Day in the life of a pet store employee. That speech is literally like on speed dial. I just hit the button and it just starts rattling out so that I can convince people to spend an extra $12 to get a 20-gallon tank instead of a 5-gallon. And a lot of people will say, one of my favorites, this is getting into this might be real fish talk, this might just be real fish store employees complaining, but, they'll literally say, well, I want a 5-gallon tank because I don't have the space in my house for a 10-gallon or anything larger. And then, they'll literally go like something like that over there, and it'll be a 10-gallon after you just told them you were trying to get them into a 10-gallon, because it'll be that much easier, and they're fighting you on every edge, and you literally just look at them and you go, you literally don't have 4 more inches in that house, huh? You don't even know where it's going, but you don't have 4 more inches. And they assume that we're going used car salesman on them, and we're just going to bleed you dry and go, oh yeah, we're going to get you $1,000 before you walk out of here. And the reality is we're just trying to save the second trip you come in, where all of a sudden now you're buying, test kits, which we think you should use anyway, but you're having problems, you need medicine, and things are going wrong, and the answer is, well, you need a bigger tank. Everything's going to circle back to, yep, we tried to tell you that, the shark that you had to have wasn't going to do well, and we wouldn't sell it to you, and you bought it somewhere else, and now you're having problems. So yeah, it's, everyone, oh, my house can't fit a bigger tank, and we hit them with, then maybe you shouldn't own that animal. That animal needs a certain size. So, not everyone, when I lived in a duplex or a rental, I knew I shouldn't buy a Great Dane. That's, not everyone's meant to own every pet, but no one wants to hear that. And, yes, we know that everyone will always, well, I'll get a bigger tank down the road if it goes well. And the reality is it won't go well. Putting too big of an animal in a small tank just isn't going to work. And so you're right. If you need that bigger tank, you'll buy it, but you'll never need it because you're not going to make it there. So.
Right. Yeah. Like with, coming down with a determined amount of gallons of water for goldfish. I'm at the point where basically you just say 30 gallons. If it's this big or this big, 30 gallons.
Yeah, and it's because today this goldfish that's this big might live in a 5-gallon, but in like 2 to 3 weeks it's already outgrown that, and people won't realize, no one sees how fast their own pet grows. They just go, yeah, it's the same size it was yesterday. And you say that every day, 5 years down the road, it's in your mind hasn't gotten any bigger, even though it's huge. And so you won't make the correct decision to upgrade. And there's no fault in starting with the end goal in mind. If I'm going to keep a goldfish, and we think each one should have 30 gallons of water, start with 30 gallons. Then you don't have to know, am I upgrading at the right time? You can just future-proof yourself. Start with the end goal. And, you'll save money, you're going to save time, so save headache. And, that brings up a whole other thing. I want to do a future episode on why Americans are the only ones to talk about aquariums in gallons, and everyone else in the world talks about footprint. So, we'll say, this fish has to have a 55 gallons of water or it won't live. And in the rest of the world, they say, that fish won't live unless you have it in a 4-foot aquarium. They don't say whether it's a 75 gallon, they don't say whether it's 55 or 33 gallons. They're all the same 4 feet, but they know that animals need this amount of territory, and so that 55 gallons in America, in the US here, it could be in a 4-foot long aquarium, it could be in a cube, it could be in a hexagon, it could be in an extra tall tank, and especially new people, they don't realize that that 55 gallon hex is horrible for African cichlids compared to the 55 gallon, standard 4-foot long by a foot, because it's like when we buy a house, we want it all on the same floor. We don't want a 10-foot by 10-foot room that's 100 feet tall. It's 1,000 square feet. We want it, laid on its side, and all of a sudden we've got 1,000 square feet to walk around in. But there are fish that take advantage of that. Sometimes fancy goldfish, discus, angelfish, that type of thing. But there's a whole episode talking about dimensional space in relation to fish and why it's important versus just the sheer amount of water. So, yeah, definitely. Lamont, the funny part is, I, for a long time, have thought 30 gallons of water minimum per goldfish, with at least 20 gallons per additional goldfish. And, people look at me like I'm crazy. Lamont broke that rule. And through trials and tribulations have found that basically 30 gallons of water is needed per goldfish. And that's how I arrived at that rule over years of keeping goldfish. Just going, it seems like whenever I'm breaking that rule, I'm losing things prematurely, and it's, not that I'm a bad fish keeper, I can keep and breed a lot of fish, but it would require insane amounts of work to pull it off. And so when I know that my average person I'm working with doesn't want an insane amount of work, I'm going to recommend 30 gallons of water. And it's not that you at home can't I keep 10 ranches of the best ones you've ever seen in my 75-gallon tank, and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I believe that you're doing that, but when I'm talking about, of the 10,000 people that are listening that are keeping goldfish right now, most of them aren't keeping 10 ranches in a 75, and of that, they might not be as big, or they may not be as healthy as they want them to be, and things like that. So we're talking in the most general of terms. And, it's kind of one of those things that if you need to ask whether you should or shouldn't be doing it, the answer is you shouldn't be doing it. If you know enough to break that rule, then you're breaking the rule and you're going to do the work. So, yeah. I don't know where I'm going with that besides, 30 gallons of water per goldfish.
Well, I would say really unfortunately sometimes you have to come up with your own conclusions, even if somebody already told you the answer to start with.
Yeah.
That's just part of, learning. But, you can go in with the best of intentions of saying, like, oh, I'm going to do this water change, like, twice a week, and I'm going to be flushing those nitrates out. Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. And after a few months, after working 40 hours plus a week or something like that, and you're coming home, and the last thing you want to do is, well, here comes, it's Wednesday again, it's time to do another water change on the goldfish, and you just find yourself in the trap of, it just kind of trails off.
I've got the perfect analogy for this. I've used it before, and I forgot about this analogy, but, when you get a new fish tank, you love doing water changes. It's like when you turn 16, you got your first car. You wash that thing every Saturday. It looked perfect because you love your ability to drive.
Right.
And your aquarium is the same way. But, if you're watching this now and you're old men like us, how often do we wash our car? Not as often as we were when we were 16.
Right.
And water changes become the same thing. A year into it, you're going, yeah, I better do that water change, and you go, well, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, and you're doing your water change, and your fish are healthy, but you're not looking forward to doing it. You're not as interactive as you were, and some people will. There are some people that are very dedicated, and I commend them. I automate my water changes because I've just gotten to the point where I'm managing so many fish, and I don't want to do wrong by them that I automate it and then spoil them when I can with manual stuff that I'm doing, but. Yeah, realize that when you get into fish, you're very excited, just like when you were 16, you got your first car, and everyone fully intends to wash that car and keep it clean forever, but real life will happen, and pretty soon you're just not doing it as much as you were, and it's not because you don't love that car or that fish anymore, it's that, well, it's Christmas, it's snowing out, I'm not going to go wash my car, and it's like, I realized you had to go to work, and then you had to, go to the movies, and then, oh yeah, it was your birthday, and things like that, and then pretty soon, it's been 10 days, and you haven't done a water change, and then you go, oh man, its fins are starting to rot away, now you put medicine in there, and, so everyone's going to find their own routine that works, and everyone starts with the best intentions. We never think that someone is saying, well, I'll just tell them I'm going to do it. We generally believe you're going to do it. We just know enough to know that we've been through the honeymoon period of, well, eventually that gets old, and being a slave to water changes isn't the most fun. I would rather, I enjoy feeding the fish way more than I enjoy cleaning them, but Yeah, so that's my analogy is, think about when you got your first car and you washed that thing and you bought every little accessory for it. You're doing the same thing with a fish tank also. And even I'll do it, I even to this day, it's like, I'll do it. I'll stay up on the work and I'll do it. Now, I've done enough things to know, like, if I can't set it up right from the beginning, I'm not going to do it. And yeah, I might have to wait 3 months till I do it. You're watching us build out a fish room out there that the water doesn't go in until it automatically gets filled in, because if I go fill up a tank with water, I'm a kid in a candy store. Fish are going in that aquarium. That's why I set aquariums up. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have the time, here we are chatting at, it's probably closing on midnight at this point about fish. We couldn't be doing this if I had to be over there changing water. And that's the thing is, you're going to start making choices, and it could be, oh, do I go out to eat Mexican food tonight, or I change water? Well, I'm going to choose Mexican because I love Mexican food. And so yeah, try not to put yourself into a situation that, is an unmanageable schedule. And I would say unmanageable schedules are people that have very dedicated work they have to do, always busy with the family, that type of thing. If you're a single guy in your 20s and you've got a whole fish room set up, well, you've got all the time in the world. So, you probably know enough to get yourself into that trouble, and you can get yourself back out of it. So,
right. I mean, this isn't geared towards, the enthusiastic fish keeper who, enjoys, kind of having that zen time of doing water changes, trimming plants, and there's definitely times for that, and there's people that enjoy it more than others, but setting it up, based on the amount of money you have to invest into a tank, and setting it up so it's the minimal amount of work possible, and I think in the long run you enjoy that tank more, because it's like, I only have to invest 5 minutes every few,
right, and if you do have the extra time to do that, instead of the 30 minutes for a water change twice a week, let's say the load means you only have to do one water change, so you spend that 30 minutes aquascaping or,
right,
researching fish or whatever. So you're still going to spend the same amount of time with the fish, but maybe it's at one of the tasks you like doing as opposed to one you don't like doing. Maybe you service your filter more. Maybe you take pictures of your fish and you're sharing with people. Maybe, there's no lack of time that we spend with fish. We spend a ridiculous amount of time with fish. That being said, if you were a world-known cook or something like that, or you love cooking, you probably love actually making and eating the dish more than you doing the dishes when you're done. And that's not to say that you're a bad cook, any more than you're a bad fish keeper. You can say, well, this guy's a bad fish keeper, he doesn't like changing water. I don't like doing the dishes, but I love eating. There's no doubt about that. I definitely have the way to show it. But, so there's no shame in going, well, I don't enjoy changing water. Well, I would say, good, you're admitting the obvious. I don't enjoy it either. There are people that legitimately do. Like, I actually love to vacuum gravel. It's kind of like, vacuuming my house. It looks so clean when I'm done that I actually like doing that. But the physical changing of the water, I could take it or leave it. But, I do get a sense of satisfaction of actually cleaning the tank, and so.
Yeah, I was, investing money versus time, I think for some people is going to work out better, because it's, I mean, I not to run off on different tangents, but it's like, when you're putting a tank together, and say, and I'm talking about people that maybe only have a few tanks in their house, or even one.
Sure.
But by accumulating the parts as you can afford them and trying to get what is the most you can get for your money and what's going to work the best, as opposed to running out on a Saturday afternoon and trying to buy everything all in one shot. Sometimes it's better to kind of...
Don't forget the fish and all that.
Right.
Like, everyone wants to... Well, how long can they sit in the bag? I gotta get my boyfriend over here to help unload this tank, or I gotta get a buddy to help, and it's, oh geez, like we could slow this down. Like, you could set the tank up and come back on a different day. That could happen.
Right. I mean, if you're on a fixed income, pacing yourself and buying the parts in installments in looking at an end goal of like, this is the fish I want to keep. Right now I can only afford to buy the tank, and then maybe in a few weeks or something like that I can afford to buy the filtration, and then you have your lighting and all that, as opposed to the sticker shock of laying down the cash for a pile of equipment that all of a sudden you're trying to rush to put together because you got to have that fish in there.
Or laying out all
Right
that
this
money,
second.
and then I've had situations where I've built something, you know, and I put the tank together and I've made concessions because of money, and then at the end, it's like, this kind of turned out crappy. Like, I literally, you know, I went in wanting something amazing, and I came out going, well, yeah, I use that quiet one filter, that thing's annoying, can't sleep with that, okay. I grabbed a lamp over here, that'll light it up for now. And the problem is, then you're like, well, yeah, I could probably grow that plant with that light. And then you kill the plants, you're like, oh, there went some money. Like, so it's not efficient money, but don't get me wrong, I get it as much as anyone, the I need to have fish in my life at any cost thing. I get it, you know, but we generally, we just want to see animals live, and, you know, people not nickel and dime themselves to death. We watch some people, you know, they'll spend money on a cartridge filter every week because they can't afford to buy a better filter or a different filter that won't cost them all that money. And they go, well, I can't afford $50 today, but I can afford $5 every week. And they get caught in that cycle for a year, you know, and at the end of the year, they spent $250 on cartridges, and they could have had that filter plus $200 spent on anything else, fish, bee, whatever it is. And you know, and that cycle starts with usually the rushed decision at the beginning that they never get to dig out of, you know, and you're stuck in a situation where it's, well, I can't not replace the cartridge or service this filter because I'm going to lose what I have in there, and they can't afford to also get out of the cycle, and so they're just stuck, you know, and they're enjoying the tank, but they're not enjoying the situation. They, you know, they want to do it, you know, but they just can't. So yeah, that's all I got on you know, being patient and setting up a tank the correct way, and
Right. Yeah, it's you know, you talk about handing out dollar bill after dollar bill for little insert filter cartridges that use chuck or that are designed to be thrown away, and you think like, well, you know, I could buy a couple packs of these, or I could literally set myself up with an air pump and a sponge filter, and you're good for probably the next few years.
yeah, there's definitely ways to spend smart money and ways to spend money. There's lots of stuff I just spend money on because I go, that's a cool gadget, I need to try that. But, you know, I run the whole fish room, I run the whole store on sponges and air, and, you know, we don't use any carbon unless we need to pull out a toxin and things like that. And most people are shocked when they come to the store and you don't use that? I've always used that. I need to use that. Stores tell me I need to. And, you know, it's like when you read the back of a package of fish food, it tells you to feed like 100 times a day. Well, think about who's telling you, giving you that advice. The person that sells fish food and makes fish food. The more fish food you use, the more money they make. You know, and I'm not saying that there aren't times when you need to feed 10 times a day to fry and stuff like that, but, you know, always, and I always tell people this, and I always think, they must think I'm insane, but realize who's giving you the advice. You know, if you're reading the box of a filter, realize that they've done everything they can to make themselves sound good, and it's the best filter on the shelf and that type of thing. And, you know, I think the Rena canister filter, they recommend replacing their Bio Stars, which are just bio rings slash they're pieces of plastic. Let's not, you know, sugarcoat it here. They're pieces of plastic we're going to grow bacteria on.
Right.
But, and AquaClear does this as well, with their bio rings, they need to be replaced every 6 months. Why? Because that makes them money. If they really got so plugged up with the bio rings that they were not usable, which that's not going to happen, but let's say it did, and, you know, for some reason we needed to, you just boil them, get them clean again, you reuse them, but they don't want to tell you that because that doesn't make them another $11 every 6 months or whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, as depressing as this sounds, you know, talking about, I mean, really, what it comes down to is the amount of stuff that's just ending up in a landfill from our, from the fish hobby, and I think those days are gone of just constantly just, pitching plastic into the trash or like whatever. Just even thinking about how much it must take just to crank out piles of activated carbon.
Right.
That,
we have the ability to recharge the carbon, and, we get asked from time to time, like, well, can't this be recharged? And the sad part is the recharging process of carbon is way worse for the environment than throwing it out and using fresh stuff. It takes more to recharge because it's like an 8-step process where it's like a low heat and there's a water and there's all these things you got to do. But to start with fresh carbon is way less harmful, so we end up throwing it out. Not that carbon isn't going to break down and be used again and stuff like that, but we've come into this throwaway society that and we personally as a business and stuff like that, we make a choice to have the least impact possible. Unfortunately, it's not like the super olden days where I won't say we, I'm not that old, but I hear stories of how awesome it was when fish got sent home in like Chinese take-home boxes and stuff like that. Like, that's awesome. Now we use a fish bag, and there's no real way we can get away from that. Like, we do have some customers who will bring in a bucket and stuff like that, and we do encourage that. But even like the bag that we're going to put in for you to take your stuff home in, it's a biodegradable bag, and we don't have to do that, and it costs us way more money. I can get a standard convenience store thank you bag for about half a cent, whereas the bags we're using I think are about 17 cents, so the cost is insane. But we know enough to know that the bags that we're giving out are ending up in the waterways, they're polluting the ocean and the lakes and the rivers and stuff like that, and so we're at least doing our part to not kill what we're trying to keep. We literally are trying to keep these animals alive in our home, and if we ever want to get wild-caught fish and stuff like that and it to be around, we need to try and not pollute as much as we can. And, even if you're stuck in that cartridge filter treadmill, and you can't get off, you can't afford to get out of it, you could at least use the plastic that's there. You cut off all the filter floss, and you take out the carbon, you throw all that away. So now you've got a plastic frame. Then you buy filter material that's in the sheet, and you cut it out, and you put that, and you just let the filter hold it, and then you reuse that piece of plastic every time, and now we're not destroying the environment just to keep these fish alive. And that's the thing is, we're at home trying to keep, let's say, 10 fish alive, and we throw a piece of plastic away that kills 10 fish over there. I mean, how hypocritical is that we're trying hard to keep it alive in our home, but we're killing the fish over here.
Right.
So, it's one of those,
It's like using, 10 pounds of plastic and cardboard and wrappers and all this to keep a fish that's extinct in the wild because of pollution. It's just this vicious cycle of, well, what?
Yeah. And I'm,
what's better, but
I don't want to say that we're doing everything perfect, because I'm sure I would have all solar for the fish store and stuff like that, but, every step we can take towards not making it worse, I think, is better. Moving at least some in the right direction is better than not. Sometimes using plants to filter your water means less water changes, means we're wasting less water, that type of thing. When I use a Python or a gravel vac or something like that, instead of using the hook up to the sink and turning the water on and letting it suck the water out and push fresh water down, worst case scenario, I'll turn it on to get a siphon started, turn the water off, it'll keep going, or B, I'll run it out the door or something like that, just because if you're gravel vacuuming your tank for 30 minutes, it's like you had the faucet on for 30 minutes going straight down the drain that is just not getting utilized. And
plus all the money that was spent to heat that water while it was in the tank.
There's all the monetary reasons. I literally just feel guilty, when I'm just like, and it's the same reason why, I'll do a water change and I'll clean my sponge filters and stuff like that. I'm killing two birds with one stone. Could I take the sponge filter, put it in a bucket of dechlorinated clean water and clean it? I could, but then I'm wasting that water. So typically, if I'm going to be green here, which I do like to be green, the water that's coming out of my aquarium or cleaning my filter, stuff like that, it's getting put on plants. I literally put a power head on one end and go water, the green beans in the garden, that type of thing. And it's just getting one more use, which one, your plants will go great because of it. So you get the added bonus there. But two, you're getting all the perks of not wasting water. We even have one customer that's using rain barrels and stuff like that to fill his aquariums, and there's lots of work you got to do. Like, there's bird parasites and, heating the temperature up and the acidity being way too low. And so he's got to do a bunch of work to get it suitable for an aquarium, but no water's being wasted really. And that's his own little project, and he's enjoying doing it. And, so everyone's going to interact with the environment and fish in their own way. And we encourage you to, do it in the least impact on the environment you can. There's no reason, it's the same reason we don't want to pour, a quart of motor oil down the faucet, because it's going to get in the waterway and just make things worse. Yeah, is our car going to spill some oil on the roadway? Yes, but let's try to minimize it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely past the point of starting to think about ways to save resources in the aquarium hobby. I think it's time to really look at it and think, how can I not only save the money that I'm spending, but at the same time, save the environment in the sense that you're trying to prolong as much life as possible, trying to reuse things as much as possible, and also just looking for products that aren't going to break in 2 weeks, and just perpetuate that cycle of throwing things away in the trash. And I've literally seen filter setups, where it's like reused laundry soap buckets and gym socks and things like that, where it works, it filters, the water tests clear or tests fine, it looks clear, and the fish are healthy. But it literally, it looks like something that,
yeah, it's not the norm.
It's the most bizarre looking thing, but it totally works. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a million ways to do that. That's more episodes and more talk on how to filter an aquarium. But yeah, I would say, if this hasn't bummed you out enough at this point, how there's no hope at all for any of us. Just look up Venezuela and Mexico and things like that, and look at the waterways where goodeids are coming from, or the guppy. It's hard to find a wild guppy in the wild, or an Endler live bear in the wild now, just because those areas of the world are now developing. And what that means is literally, it's not so much that a factory is going, oh, well, we're just going to dump this horrible thing into the river anymore, or the lake, or whatever. But you literally look and it's like, oh, well, actually, there's I can count 400 plastic water bottles sitting there. It's that kind of thing where it's your everyday person is contributing to that, not, oh, this horrible evil corporation did it, which that happens too. But it's literally everyone going, well, I don't make a difference. That thing is what's actually doing it now. And the reason they're able to do it is their society is evolving, and now they are buying bottled water, and they are consuming products just like we are. And, this kind of sounds privileged and whatever, but now that they are consuming just like we are, they're ruining just like we are. And that's the thing is, look in places that aren't ruined yet, or are just now getting ruined, and realize we're already past that. We're so far gone that now let's try to just stop it going further. We've already killed a bunch of stuff, and let's at least try to slow it down, or at least go, well, I'm trying not to do as bad as I did yesterday.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of, it's time to take a look and kind of re-educate ourselves as far as what can be done and what should be done, and kind of rebuilding the hobby from that perspective. So it's not just, it is a luxury hobby,
Yep.
And I think, with that luxury, sometimes we treat it as a luxury as opposed to a privilege, and that's where we start to run into trouble, in the sense that the hobby is driven by manufacturers, and then it's also driven by consumers, and so if it was up to the manufacturers, I think a lot of them would just they want to train you to buy as much crap as possible and as frequently as possible. And I think as a hobbyist, we should look at it as, well, we want to extend as much life as possible out of our fish and also out of our aquarium setups as well. And so I think it's time to kind of take some new ideas or take a new direction in certain areas, which and I would say that a lot of hobbyists are doing that, and I think it's up to us to kind of educate people in those directions as well. So
Yep. A lot of times it's easier to sell a product that's bad than it is to sell a good product, because a good product costs more money. That's the uphill battle for us anyway at the store, is convincing you to use something that will last forever, and we'll save you money in the long run. It's like right now we struggle all the time with LED lighting. People go, oh, those don't even grow plants. The problem is there's a wide spectrum of people making LED lights. Some are really good, some are really bad. When we ask people like, well, what kind of lighting are you working with? Well, I have LED, and it's like, well, sure, there's, the remote control to your TV has an LED also, and it shines red when you turn the light off, yet that's not going to grow a plant for you. But so there's a lot of, oh, LEDs don't grow plants, or they don't work, or, oh, I don't want to invest in that. But, it is where technology is going, and it is, instead of buying a bulb that we're going to have to throw away in a year, we can buy LEDs that in theory are going to last us 15 years. And, it's more money at the get-go, and that's not even 100% true, because, a lot of those fixtures, an aquarium light used to be $100, whether it was a T8 or T5, or it's an LED now, and so it's really the same price. So a lot of times you're better off just buying the best technology for your $100 than the older technology. So
right, because it's also, yes, there's the initial cost of the fixture, but you also have to look at how much power is being consumed by that. So it's like, oh, it's a great deal to go out and buy these fluorescent light fixtures and versus buying a new LED fixture. But the amount of power the fluorescents are going to be using, the amount of heat that they produce, how often you're replacing those bulbs, which is, even talking about fluorescence is kind of a moot point, because they're slowly going to
they're being
ban
phased
all that
out.
stuff anyway. But I think people, a lot of people don't understand that their options are dwindling, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah, I think the mandate in the U.S. is by 2020 we have to be all LED, but like in Japan right now, as of 2015, they're all LED already. So it's one of those things that, we're kind of behind the curve, and we're giving ourselves more leeway to catch up. But, we literally this year, I remember, and I think about this all the time, because it drives me insane, because I am an efficiency guy, but we had a customer had power compact lights, and they were setting the tank back up, and they needed new bulbs because it was saltwater bulbs, and they were doing a freshwater tank. And we don't carry power compact bulbs in the store because it's kind of older technology, and it could be square pin or straight pin, and it's what wattage are you going to need, and then what flavor, or not flavor, but spectrum are you going to want. And so I could have 40 options sitting there, and none of them are the ones that you want. But I said, well, let me look up the price. And she had needed, I believe it was 3 bulbs, because one was still working, or she had one, and it was a 4-bulb fixture. And I want to say it was like 4, 55-watt bulbs. And I literally remember that the price I gave to her was like $62, was before tax. And I mentioned that, okay, yeah, this is a 4-foot light, but you realize we could spend and buy, for $75, we can get a low light LED, the Stingray, for $75, or we can get like a Planet Plus for $150. And she literally chose, well, I shouldn't say she, they as a family chose to buy the Power Compact bulb at $62 instead of just investing in LED then, which the Power Compacts they had would have been brighter than the lower end Stingray. I realized that, but they were just wanted to do a simple low light planet aquarium, so it would have been fine anyway. So for a few more dollars, they could have had the LED, and their logic was, we can't afford that right now, but I think in 3 months or so, we'll end up buying an LED. And to me, that was just, one, we haven't used up the life on those bulbs. Two, we've invested $62 that, almost buys that LED light for almost $10 more. And I just think about it all the time, and I just go, well, those kind of decisions are being made all the time, whether we know about it or not. So if someone just comes in and goes, I need one bulb, and we'll order it up, and that happens, we don't necessarily get to see the whole picture of, we literally could have sold you this, and it was so much better. But sometimes, in their mind, maybe LED technology wasn't where they want it to be yet, and so that was the answer they didn't want to lay out for us or something like that. We can never know the answer, but
it's witchcraft.
Yeah, there's people, LEDs don't work, I bought an LED light, it was horrible,
right.
And, some of those, first marine land fixtures were pretty bad, they were expensive, and, sometimes people say, like, well, I want a $200 LED light. It's like, well, just because you spent $200 doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I can buy a brand new car, and every car you buy, it's great until 5 years down the road and you realize, that year was a lemon. You don't know when you're buying, if you're buying good yet.
Sure.
But yeah, that story, I think about it all the time, because in my mind, I could not have not bought an LED light there. Like, I literally just, for $10 more, I solved so many problems. And even knowing that, I'm gonna buy LED later, even if I can't afford the $150 light, I would have bought the $75 one and then bought another $75 one in 3 months,
sure.
Instead of buying the whole light for $150 later, wasting those $62. And what are you gonna do with that fixture? It's ridiculously hard. If you're watching this and you're trying to sell a used Power Compact or any kind of light, no one wants it. Everyone wants LED, so it's dang near useless at this point, but efficiency.
Right, and then not even getting into that, considering whether the reflector hood is actually bouncing that light back into the tank. I mean, there's all that stuff.
Right, because I didn't know exactly what fixture, and there are, like some of the age supply kits, they make reflectors that are ridiculously good and can make, a light produce twice as much light as this off-the-shelf light over here, so, they could have had that, or maybe, more likely, I would guess it was like a core life fixture, and the reflector was pretty poor, and things like that, but, those are all topics. Maybe one day we'll go, check out old lighting that we thought was really good, or, and maybe we'll do some comparisons, because if you've owned an age supply kit, that those things it's like you're on the surface of the sun when you turn one of those things on, and they were amazing and still are amazing. The reflectors are very good on those, and they are really well built for an aquarium. That being said, even they make LED lights now that are amazing. They're a little more expensive than some of the other options, and you got to still build it. The age supply kits, they're a kit because you still have to build it. And, that's not for everyone, but they do make, they are there to make a good product, and they do that. But, we'll assume that it's an off-the-shelf light that, they're going for, if we keep it in one piece and we bend it 4 ways, it reflects light good enough, so,
yeah. A lot of times, of course, most people know this, but it's like, sometimes you look at a fluorescent fixture and it's literally just a curved piece of aluminum in there. It's like, how is that actually just, based on how light is reflecting and like that, I would say probably more of it ends up going at the sides of the tanks and actually at the bottom of the tank.
Right, and that's where the age supply kits. The reflectors themselves were built by people that grow plants and know aquariums and want a certain spread for the aquarium, and they were bent perfect and they were very efficient. And that's where you lose some of the efficiency when you buy like a shop light and you're going to put it on your aquarium. Well, a shop light's meant to be hung from a ceiling and have an 8 to 16 foot spread, and you're trying to spread the light out over your 55-gallon tank that's 1 foot. It's not very efficient at that. But it wasn't designed to do that either, and a shop light's very cheap and it'll get you through in a pinch, don't get me wrong, but it comes down to different LEDs do different things, different reflectors do different things, and that's where, a heater is a heater is a heater. Well, yeah, they all heat water, but they're not all the same quality and they're not all the same efficiency and things like that, and there's probably an episode on each one of those things where we go, today we're going to talk about 400 heaters and bore you to death, but at the end, you will know too much about heaters on electronic thermostats and digital ones, and here's how things break in this thing, and here's what shatters here, and
Right.
Because if it's anything, I've broken a lot of stuff. When you play with a lot of stuff, you break a lot of stuff, and
When we do that episode, we'll just put a little line at the bottom of the screen that says fast forward here.
That's right. Fast forward through 37 minutes of ranting of bad heaters to find out that this one's decent.
Right.
That's all we do. We rant, and then, I'm just going to make it so you can fast forward through all this.
Save yourself the earache.
That's right. But really, you're listening to this while you're doing your water changes anyway, because, we all started and we're a slave to our water changes now. So, this episode here will get you through about one water change.
Yeah, recycle that old garden hose to siphon water out of your tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just think about how that brass fitting has been drugged in the mud about 40 billion times when you got your mouth around it.
Oh, yeah. Nothing wakes you up more than a mouthful of aquarium water.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Mm-hmm. Life assuring is what life affirming.
You question why. How many water changes am I doing again? Oof, man.
Yeah. Well,
So, all right. Let's go ahead and shoot an intro to episode number 3. Let's maybe not give it a title.
okay.
So that way, we've shot a lot of stuff. Let's maybe do episode 3 and 4 and 5. So we'll just have us introing, and then we can have a couple subscribe and like and that kind of thing. Because who knows that footage if it comes down to 1 show or 3 shows or
Right.
whatever shows.
Right.
So that way we're not held up by we gotta get back in there. We're wearing different clothes and better shoot some different, intros and outros.
Just wear the same clothes every day.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No. Yeah.
Why give the illusion that
Yeah, maybe we should be changing so that way people know we actually do shower and.
I swear this is a different shirt.
That's right. People don't realize I actually use aquarium water to take a shower. And I really like to recycle, so I get one more use out of it. Keep it clean for the fish, and that's a sign. That's how you know if you're up on your water changes. If you can make it through taking a shower with aquarium water without puking, you're up to date on the water changes. If you can't make it, you got to up the schedule. Trust me. So, it might say something that we're talking about 2 water changes a week, and I'm talking about using water change water. So I may or may not only shower twice a week with
That's such a lie.
with shower water, but that's actually the reason I own an aquarium store and a fish room is I just needed more water to take showers. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a car wash. You just.
yeah. Now you're onto it. Now we're gonna open up a car wash, and so once I'm done showering, it'll already have soap in it, and we're gonna wash cars.
Sure.
That's assuming I use soap. Yeah, if you could think of something for us to talk about, that's the important thing. I want to know what people actually want to hear about.
Sure.
Because right now we're just rambling. We can talk all day, but if no one wants to hear any of it, let's at least, there's going to be one person on the internet that we actually help, in theory. I'm not guaranteeing we're helping anyone, but
Right.
one person out there, if we answer their question, at least then we've accomplished something. So if we can get them to ask stuff, and then encouraging them to subscribe just so that way makes us feel better.
Well, that's an outro right there.
That's right. Yeah, it's makes us feel good when their numbers go up.
Sure. Well, thanks for watching another episode of Real Fish Talk. I'm here with Corey, and I'd just like to say thank you for watching.
We appreciate it.